give some words of encouragement to Kylene. She'll come back in and see all the comments. She can answer you back. And we'd love to see what you guys have to say to her. So Testimony Tuesday, here we go. Miss Kylene, who are you? Introduce yourself a little bit. Let us get to know you.
All right. Hi. Thank you. So my name's Kylene. I live in Jefferson City, Missouri. I have been married for about 19 years. I have 3 amazing boys, and 1 new grandbaby. So that's been an exciting adventure. But I'm a nurse, and I'm excited to be here.
That's amazing. And Kylene and I really don't know each other too well, meaning like, we didn't grow up with each other or long lost friends, and I think that's what's so special about these Testimony Tuesdays is I'm getting to connect with people and meet people that just have a story to tell, just like you and the next person. Everybody has a story to tell. And the ones that come here on Tuesdays with me are just bold and courageous enough to open up and share their story. And that can be hard, because there's judgment and there's fear, there's shame and guilt. And so Kylene shared with me before this that it took a while for her to be able to share this. It is a part of her story. We all have a story, but what are people going to think, and what kind of picture does that paint for me? And now I have a family and I have kids, and do I want them to know everything about my past? And so I'm excited for you to hear her story. I'm just going to sit back and listen to it all. Of course, it's a conversation. So again, use the chat if you have questions for her. So Kylene, we're going to go back. Let's go back to your early 20s. What was life like? What were you going through? Let's go back there first.
Okay. So I guess I should say I grew up in church. I was a diehard Christian my whole life, on fire for God. And I guess I really probably should have started when I was 18, and I got married. And well, actually, I'm sorry. I should start at 18. I went on a couple of mission trips. That's where I want to start. I went on a couple of mission trips my freshman year of college, and I felt the strong pull into the mission field. And I met this guy at 18, got married. He told me, I said, well, I don't know. I can't get married unless you want to go into the mission field with me. And he's like, oh yeah, I want to do that. After we got married, he said he never wanted to be a missionary. He only said that because he knew that I wouldn't marry him. And it kind of started that downward spiral for me at that point. He was a very controlling man. I was not allowed to have any friends. He moved me away from my family, and I had to get his approval for anything. So I stayed in that relationship for a year and a half, and I left him in the middle of the night with nothing but the clothes on my back because I felt like things were going to escalate. And so I was 20 when I left him. And so that's where my story really started.
Now, you're not in Missouri at this time, right?
Right. Yeah. He had moved us away to the state of Texas. And so I was living in Texas. And I really kind of kept things from my family. I didn't tell them how bad things were, because I was ashamed of the fact that I got myself into the situation. I was young. And at that point, I had really let my relationship with God go, because I was ashamed, because I felt like I missed God's calling on my life, because I let this man convince me that he was, following God's calling. And then all of a sudden we were married, and that wasn't even his calling. And so I felt ashamed that I even allowed that to happen.
Right. So not only in the middle of the night, you packed up very little things and left, but you're in Texas, so there's not really family and friends around, right?
Yeah. So at the time, my mom was living in Missouri and my dad lived in Mississippi. So he was about a 5-hour drive from where I lived in Texas. And I called my dad. I stopped at a payphone. I called my dad and I said, I left. I can't do this anymore. And my dad drove. It was like 11 o'clock at night. He drove and met me halfway in Louisiana. We stayed the night there at a hotel until we could figure out, like, what am I going to do from here?
Right.
And the next day, I knew that my husband was going to be at work. And so my dad and I drove back to Texas to get a few more of my things. And then at that point, I left and I never looked back. So
Okay.
from there, I stayed in Mississippi with my dad for a month until I kind of got my bearings about me and figured out what to do. And then I decided to move to Missouri at that point to kind of get away from all of it, my history. So I moved up to Missouri. It was in the year 2000. And I moved up to Missouri to live with my mom. And like I said, I was 20 years old at that point.
Yeah.
I didn't have a path. I didn't have a career. I didn't have I mean, I had worked a few odd jobs while I was married, as a secretary and stuff. Couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. So I just got a part-time job. At that point, my mental health was suffering because I had just gotten out of a relationship where I had to ask permission for everything.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't figure out where I wanted to go. Church wasn't for me at that point because I was still ashamed of everything that I'd went through, and I didn't feel like God could ever love me again.
Yeah. You're 20 years old right now and you're divorced. You're essentially homeless.
Yeah.
Jobless, potentially. Like that has to do something to a person mentally, physically, where you wake up like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
It's no wonder you were feeling that way. And mental health just kind of maybe sets in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I felt worthless. I felt like I didn't deserve things. But my family was really supportive. My mom, she let me stay with her as long as I needed to. I eventually got a job as a secretary at a nursing school. And so I worked that job for a little bit. Well, when I started that job, that was probably about 8 months after I had moved to Missouri.
Okay.
And I met another guy. And, you think I wasn't in the best headspace at that point. And it was not a good relationship. But I didn't feel like I was worthy of anything better than that. And so I wound up moving in with this guy. And it was not a good relationship. And about 4 months into the relationship, I found out he had been cheating on me. And that was kind of like the last straw for me.
Yeah.
And so I wound up attempting to take my life. And I ended up in the hospital. I was in the ICU. And I don't remember much about that time. Thankfully, they saved my life. They were able to save it. But the thing that I remember the most was there was a nurse, and I call her my angel because I don't know her name. I don't know, like I couldn't even tell you what she looked like. But I remember waking up and she was sitting at my bedside and she had some hard conversations with me, like, what are you doing with your life? Where are you going? You you are worth more than this.
Yeah.
And like I said, I can't tell you everything that was said during that time because I don't remember much, but I remember her making an impact on me. And not only me, but my mom. My mom, of course, never left my bedside when I was in the hospital. And the nurse was wonderful to my mom. She supported her. Like, she took so much time out of her busy day to spend with us, and it made such an impact on me. I had to spend some time in the hospital working on my mental health and healing myself. And I wish I could say that it was like an overnight fix, but it wasn't. But when I got discharged from the hospital, I felt a pull on my life, that I knew I had a mission, and I knew I had a purpose again.
Yeah.
Because of that nurse. And
Yeah.
I was like, I want to be like her.
Like a second chance. Like,
Yeah.
I'm getting a second chance. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I knew that I was meant for more at that point, but I didn't know what.
Yeah.
Well, I just happened to work at the nursing school, and my boss at that time, after I came back to work after the hospitalization, she started asking me, like, are you interested in nursing? You know, you can always apply to nursing school. And I was like, I don't know. I never looked at myself that I was smart enough.
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I wasn't the smartest kid. And I mean, I always looked at nursing as you had to be super smart at science and math. And those were the two things I was not always great at.
Amen.
But I was like, well, I mean, I can always try. So I applied. I got in, I got accepted. And I was like, okay, well, let's try it. You know, at this point, I felt like I didn't really have anything else to lose. And so I was going through counseling, and I was working on myself. I was trying to get back into going to church, but I still didn't have that strong foundation with God. At that point, it was just kind of like testing the waters.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I don't know that I ever felt like God could love me, because not only did I ignore his call, but then I just tried to hurt myself. And I just kind of went through the motions, I'd say. So I made it through my first semester of nursing school, and I did really well. And so then my second semester of nursing school was my labor and delivery. And I knew the minute I saw my first birth, I was like, that's what I want to do. And I loved it. But here came another distraction. Another guy came into my life, and was not another good guy. And it was not a good experience. I allowed myself to be distracted. Came down to the end of my second semester of nursing school, and I failed by 0.6%. You had to have a 75% to pass and move on to your next semester, and I had a 74.4%. And there was nothing, like, I was like, isn't there anything, like any extra credit, anything I can do just to bump me up just a little bit? And they were like, no. Another very hard lesson.
Yeah.
I had to learn. And I was like, and then so one semester that I was like, man, I loved labor and delivery, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. But then it was like another smack in the face. I allowed a distraction to come into my life and treat me horribly, and then it had repercussions on my life. So that was a very hard, embarrassing moment for me, that I had to repeat. And not only did I have to repeat that semester, it put me behind on graduating.
Okay.
So I persevered and pulled myself up and just was like, okay, I can do this. And I repeated that semester. And I think that was such a good thing, because it also, I got to repeat labor and delivery. So it wasn't, you know, I mean, at least I got to repeat something that I loved. And it just solidified even more that that was what I wanted to do. So I managed to make it through. I got rid of the guy. I made it through the rest of the next few semesters. And then I wound up meeting the man I'm married to now, my husband.
Okay, let me ask you a quick question, because I know that there's probably a mom or a friend or someone listening to this, and you've went through two guys now. Well,
Yeah.
three really. One
Yeah.
you first married to, and then two other guys. And we figured out that they're not good guys. They're not who I want to marry. They're not who I want to be with for the rest of my life. And so I guess my question is just, especially to that mom that's like, man, my daughter's just not picking a very good guy. Do you think that it's because maybe the pit that you were still in, or the history that you were carrying? Like, what advice maybe you give to them where you're going through the motions maybe, and so like you're desperate and he's cute, or he's going to give me what I want, he's going to fill that hole in my heart right now, and so I'm going to let him in? Like, what would you say to that?
Man, it's hard because I know, like when I was 18 and I got married, both of my parents were like, "Don't do it," and I had that pit in my stomach even the night before I got married, and I had doubts. I remember sitting and talking to my dad about it, and I said, I don't know if I can go through this, and I just kind of chalked it up to it's cold feet.
Yeah.
I'm 18, it's cold feet. But looking back now, I realized, I think, I feel like that was the Holy Spirit
Yeah.
trying to guide me. And, but I felt guilty because there was a whole wedding planned. There was, I already had, everybody was already in town. Everybody was, like my whole family was there. And I ignored it. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
I ignored those feelings and that pit in my stomach. And man, if I would have just listened, but I think as a family member, I can't even imagine what my parents went through, knowing that they knew I was not making the best choice, but they supported me anyway, and
That's a word.
yeah, the advice I could give is, just give your words of advice, be there, listen, but don't push, because I think it only makes you push more towards, but if
Do it regardless, maybe.
yeah. And I think one of the things that my parents both had instilled in me is, if you ever have doubts about something, or you have that gut feeling, and then that's usually either the Holy Spirit, or there's just something, God guiding you, saying not the right thing for you, and should always listen to that feeling.
Yeah.
And I wish that I would have listened to that feeling, but all the things that I've been through, it guided me to who I am today.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, that's such a good word. And that's just what I was thinking. Like, there's just, it seems like there's always that woman or young adult that just keeps going back to that toxic relationship, or keeps going back to that guy that that they're not good for. And deep down, you feel bad for her, because you're like, she just wishes that he will change, and she thinks that he's going to. And we know that we can't change people. Like, they have to change themselves in the end. And so yeah, I was just thinking about that mom, or that girl, that they have to break the chains essentially. You have to choose for yourself that you're just not going to go back to that anymore, and that can be very difficult.
absolutely. I think for me, it was, I just didn't feel like I deserved any better,
Okay.
and I think instilling in your daughter, or even son, because I know it can happen, both ways, that they're worthy, and always giving them that self-confidence, and instilling in them, the red flags to look for, really building them up, and not teaching them not to settle, you know. But if they do get in that situation, just be supportive as you can, and just lots and lots of prayer.
Yes, yes, amen. That's a word. That's amazing. Okay, so we're redoing the semester again. We get to do labor and delivery and see babies born again. That's a blessing. So
Yeah.
take it from there.
Yes. I made it through the next semester and I passed with an A when I repeated. And then that I only, with nursing school, you have, for your associate's degree, you have 4 semesters total that you complete. And so that is the second semester. So then I went on to my third semester. And my about the middle of the third semester, I met my husband, and he had joined the Army. And so he was away at training, and we had known each other for many years because he's my brother-in-law's best friend. And we both really liked each other, but things never seemed to work out. And sadly, when I had met the guy that I was with during my second semester of nursing school, he was also in a very bad relationship. And I was like, man, if only we would have just not been so stubborn and we could have gotten together then. But anyway, so he was away doing basic training and training for his Army career. And I was finishing up nursing school, and we were just kind of talking back and forth on the phone. And my last semester of nursing school, he got orders that he was going to be deploying. And so we knew we loved each other. We knew, granted, we'd only been together just a few months, but he said, I know you're the one for me. And he said, I want you to be taken care of if something should happen to me while I'm gone. And so we wound up getting married. We eloped on the Army base in Colorado. And over a weekend, we didn't have anybody there except for his first sergeant as a witness. And we got married on his birthday because I had went to Colorado to visit him for his birthday.
Oh, well, you never forget your anniversary. That's perfect.
Right. So, and so we were apart our first, several months of marriage, because he was out in Colorado getting ready to deploy and I was finishing up nursing school. But I finally felt like all the pieces in my life were coming together, except there was always something missing. And I never could figure it out. So I just kept plugging along. But, I wasn't really still in church. I wasn't really still praying to God every day. I wasn't still, I just still kind of felt very distant from God. I believed in him. I prayed, just not, to the extent of where I probably could have, just because I felt like there's no way he could still love me.
Yeah.
So my husband deployed to Iraq. I graduated nursing school. He didn't get to go to my graduation because he was gone. And I started my first job as a nurse. I was still living in Springfield, Missouri at the time, and life was going pretty good. And then he deployed in October of 2005. I started my first job in March of 2006. And then I knew I was going to have to move out to Colorado because that's where he was stationed. And so the opportunity came up. I started applying to some hospitals out there because I thought, well, I should go ahead and start thinking about moving out there because he was supposed to be gone for 12 months. And so I knew that I should think about moving out there. And so opportunity came up and I got a job at a hospital out there working in women's health, exactly what I wanted.
And you don't have kids at this point yet, right?
What's that?
You don't have kids at this point yet, right?
No. We had our oldest, he is, my stepson.
Okay,
And so, that's the only child that we had, but he lived with his mom full time.
got it. Because that always just kind of adds another dynamic, when you're trying to be together in military and it's a lot.
Yes. Yeah. So I moved to Colorado, while my husband was deployed, started working. Then about 3 months after we moved to Colorado, it was not too long before he was supposed to come home. We got the news that they were extending his deployment. And so he was going to be gone until December of that year instead of October, which was devastating. But, I was like, well, what's another 3 months, right?
Yeah, made it this far.
Yeah. So I was doing really well. Then my husband came home, and he was not the same guy that I married. And things were really, really tough for that first year after he came home. A lot of fighting, a lot of, like me begging him to go get help. And me wondering, what did I get myself into?
Gosh, that just
Because
brings me to tears because military families and I don't know, I can't commiserate, but they just go through things that no one truly understands when you don't get your husband back.
yeah. Well, and we had never really lived together before he went because we were always separated. The
Sure.
first full 2 years of our marriage, we were separated by him being, away at trainings, and me finishing nursing school. And so, coming back from Iraq, not only was he different, but we were still having to learn how to live together too. And we both had so much baggage that we brought into the marriage. It was a very tough transition. Back then, mental health wasn't in the military wasn't as talked about. You didn't go to your sergeant and tell him that you're struggling. That was a sign of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't the support that there was now.
Yeah.
So fast forward a year, I wound up getting pregnant, and my husband was still struggling really bad. Sometimes I didn't know if I would come home and find him, on the floor.
Mm.
And so finally, when I started showing with my pregnancy, I remember a night specifically, I said, please go get help for not only me, but you, but our child, and it was that point where he finally broke down and went and got help. It took a long time for him to heal, and he's still, there's still a lot of days, but I'm just thankful that he took that first step to get the help that he needed.
And when you say that, is it mostly counseling sort of
Yeah.
help? Okay.
Yeah, he went to his doctor with the VA, and then the VA, of course, got him into counseling. They started him on medicine. They did like the EMDR therapy with him, and really able to work through a lot of the things that he saw over there.
Okay. So would you say PTSD was like his big struggle?
Yeah, it was. So they had diagnosed him with PTSD, and depression and anxiety. And so it took many years of counseling to kind of help him past that. But he, like I said, he still struggles even now today, and it's been 20 years since he's been over there.
That's crazy.
But, yeah, the lasting effects that war can have. And so
But what a circle of life almost, because you were in the ICU, early 20s, mental health at your pit, and now you essentially have to be the rock. You know, you have to kind of be that strong person when your other half is struggling and at their pit, even
Yeah.
when you may not be whole yet.
Right. And I mean, that was the thing, was I still myself, had so much baggage that I just shoved down,
Yeah.
that I was not whole. And I let a lot of that come to the surface. And then you add in a new baby on top of that. And I had postpartum depression,
Mhm.
because, I mean, here I am with a new baby, a husband who's struggling, and I had so much issues from my past that I never truly healed from.
Yeah.
It, my poor child. There were many days that I just I went through the motions, you know.
Yeah, it seems like it's in those time zones. I was telling you, it's all of these testimonies has almost felt like it's when you're at rock bottom in your pit and you literally have nothing else, nowhere else
Hmm.
to turn. You don't know what else to do. And it's like that's when you realize I'm going to have to look up. I'm
Yeah,
going to have to send a prayer up. I'm going to have to open my Bible. I'm going to have faith in something else because it seems like nothing else is working this side of heaven.
yeah, yeah. And um, I I spent. I'm so sorry, my dog's barking.
All good.
I spent years. I will say I spent years in that rock bottom, with my mental health. It, it. I suffered as a mother. I suffered as a wife. The only thing that I found that I was good at was nursing,
Okay.
um, and my career, and I was able to pour into every single mom that I have come in contact over the last 18 years, and give them a part of me, because when I was discharged from that hospital and that nurse poured into me,
Hmm.
I told myself I would always be that type of nurse. And so that was my mission. And um, I'm not going to say it was easy these last 18 years being a nurse. I've had many, many moments, but I feel like I've kind of come full circle,
Yeah.
to where, fast forward all these years, to the story. I have found my mission field. Um, I have found my faith in God again.
Mm,
I I feel like that calling that I had at 18, while it took me a long time,
yeah.
the mission field isn't just going and traveling to, a foreign country. The
Amen.
mission field is where we are. Um, and so I made it my mission to, while, when you're working in the hospital and as a care manager, as I am now, you can't necessarily just share the gospel
Right.
but I always tell myself, if I can share some of God's love with people that I come in contact with, and I touch one life, then that is worth it to me.
Just like that angel nurse did for you years
Yeah.
before.
Yes.
Man.
So if I could ever find her, I would hug her neck and tell her she truly saved my life. And she played a huge part. And that's why I call her my angel,
Yeah.
because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be on the path that I am today.
Right.
And I I don't know how many babies I've helped come into this world, but I'm sure it's in the hundreds.
Wow.
And I have loved every minute of it. My faith in God, I finally, and it's really only, I'm 40, 45 now, and it's really only in the last 2 years that I've had a lot of healing inside, and I have really been able to accept God's love again. Like I said, over the last 20 years, I've prayed, I've believed in God, but I never felt like He could love me
Yeah.
back because of everything I've done. But I finally realized I am worthy. I am his daughter, and I am um, on his. My path took many different crazy turns, but I am fulfilling the calling that he did put on my life. It's just in a different way than what I thought it would be.
Yeah, and even if you're not a nurse listening to this, like you can be that angel for somebody else too. And it can be the simplest things. It's not like that nurse necessarily had her Bible open on your bedside, like just pouring the gospel into you,
Mm-hmm.
It was little nuggets of things that she said or did, or sometimes even it's just a hug and I'm here for you. Like there are
Yeah,
some people just dealing with some hard things. And if you feel just like we were talking about earlier, the Holy Spirit, if you feel that nudge, like maybe I should go say something, maybe I'm feeling like I need to go do something, say something, then go do it because that
absolutely.
could be that nurse angel for them. That
Mm-hmm.
that's powerful.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I really instill in my children.
Hmm.
Um, that your words matter. And even just simply saying, you look nice today, or just that small little compliment, because you never know, the person beside you could be doing their best not to fall apart,
Yep.
or they may be going home to want to hurt themselves, or they may, and just that one little thought. Or kind gesture could be the one thing that helps hold them together.
That's so true. And the reverse is just the same. That
Yeah,
one negative thing that you say to that person could be the last thing that it takes to break the camel's back too.
yeah,
And that's, we just don't know what people are carrying. And, if they're at the end of their rope, then we don't want to be that person that pushes them over, So you're right. Words do matter. And what we say and what we do truly can have an impact for good or for bad.
right.
Mm,
Um, a couple years ago, I felt Esther 4:14. I know I had shared with you
yes.
perhaps you were made for a time such as this, and that verse has been on my heart, and I think that was one of a couple years ago a healing part for me, because it was looking back and seeing that I have come full circle. And that's been kind of my verse for my life the last few years, um, knowing that I have touched people that I otherwise wouldn't have if my life would have ended 20 years ago.
Yes.
I I keep my eyes upward now, and I have faith that God has me on this path, and that even though I'm in my 40s, I still have a lot of life
Amen.
left in me, and I am going to spend every single day making the people around me feel loved, feel encouraged, and know that they are worthy of all of the love.
Gosh, I love it. I heard something the other day, Kylene, and I can't get it off my mind, but it was the saying, God, it's all in God's plan.
Mhm.
If we flip it and we say, God has a plan for it all, then there's such a difference, especially to the person that maybe is an unbeliever or that is questioning or that just doesn't have a strong faith. Because if we say it's all in God's plan, then I, as a not a believer, or I'm just on the edge there, I would say, then why would a loving God put Kylene in an ICU bed in her 20s? Why would a God do that? But if I flip it and I say it's all in God's plan, He may not have put you there, but
Mhm.
He brought you out. And when
Yeah,
we look at Kylene's entire story, then the puzzle pieces start to fit in together, and we realize it may not have been God's plan for her, but He worked it all out for the good,
yeah,
and His plan finally came to fruition.
absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it makes
it's
a difference.
amazing
Like,
how.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's just a mindset shift, when you realize he is good, he will work it all out for the good, even though, that was his plan, like that just kind of sounds silly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is. how the puzzle pieces can fit together. And sometimes I know it's hard to figure out why we have to go through the pain that we go through. And a lot of it, I mean, you can get into the discussion, the free will, the things that we as humans, and, we're, it's in our nature to sin because we're not perfect. But the way that God can bring you out of the pain and make good things happen from the pain, and it's hard to see it when you're going through it, but when you heal, allow yourself to heal from it and really lean into God and his mercy and forgiveness and love, and just sometimes it's just as much as just separating yourself from, that's kind of what I've done the last couple of years, is I've really kind of taken a step back from a lot of people, distractions, things in my life, because I found that I was, that I talked earlier about how I just always felt like something was missing.
Yeah.
So I spent so many years trying to find my worth in other people, trying to find my worth in, like staying as busy as I could, because I couldn't stand that gnawing, emptying feeling like what is missing in my life. And so I spent the last couple of years kind of taking a step back and really focusing on healing me from the inside and seeing that, I need to love me before I can allow other people close to me, because I was so busy focusing on, my worth in other people's eyes and not focusing on my worth in God's eyes and my eyes. And so
that's such a good point. And like you were saying earlier, guys in the past distracted you. Those were your distractions. And now it's like, okay, maybe I need a distraction in my life. Let's let nursing be that distraction. And then it almost switches to your purpose, and people can find their purpose in a spouse, like lust and all those things are real. And then once you kind of broke those chains and you realized this can be a healthy distraction, this can truly be my purpose, and you're still living that out as a nurse. And it's Nurses Week, right?
Yes, it is Nurses Week.
Happy Nurses Week, Mental Health Month. I mean, did this not come at the perfect time?
I know, this was, and we didn't notice when we scheduled, for this day, and then it just happened to fall. So it was
my gosh, you nurses, I'm telling you what. So I told you my sister's a nurse. She's a NICU nurse. So shout out to all of you nurses. My gosh, you are a godsend. So I was a teacher for 11 years. And then of course I am now doing this full time, but I am pretty good at public speaking, so like at church, I'll get up and I'll speak and whatnot. Well, her husband the other day was like looking at my sister and he said, "Why are you not good at public speaking?" And my sister said, "Well, can she put an IV in a baby?" Nope, I cannot. We all have our strengths.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, man. Well, Kylene, this was so stinking powerful. There's somebody out there, and if you know someone, tag them, share this out. Please, please, please leave some comments for her as well. But I just want to leave with this, Kylene, unless you have any other words, because I told you before we got on, like our tiny little town just this last week had such tragedy, and it was resulted around mental health. And it seems like mental health and cancer are just common household terms anymore. And so if you would, just what advice would you give? You dealt with it. You dealt with it with your husband. You've been in the pit. You know what mental health is like, and you know now what counseling can do for you, and you know what medicine can do for you. And so to that person dealing with it themselves, the person that has a family member dealing with it or a neighbor, just what would you tell them? What advice would you give?
Biggest thing is patience. It does take quite a bit of patience to be there for somebody who is in the midst of a mental health struggle. A lot of support. Sometimes it's just a matter of, you don't have to ask them, "Are you okay? What can I do?" Because a lot of times when you're struggling, you don't know the answer to that. So it's just a matter of showing up for them, bring them a meal, go help pick up their house, because I guarantee you, they're embarrassed of their house, because when you're struggling so bad with depression, that's the last thing on your mind is cleaning. And so going over without judgment, Just being that person, just even if you just sit with them in the silence, just so they know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
Those are the biggest words of advice. Lots of patience, prayers, just being there. And if it's, they don't know how to answer your, what can I do? You just find the little ways that you can show up to be there for them.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, because what we want to do sometimes is, I mean, as a mom, as a type A person, and I'm healthy, like I can't commiserate with that. And so it's, you just, what can I do? What do you need? And you're just like
Yeah.
over them and asking all the questions. And that's only going to create more chaos maybe in their mind when they're not stable.
Yeah. And for the person who might be struggling, my best advice is it's okay if all you do is get out of bed for the day. It's okay if all you do is you get dressed. Take it 1 minute. Sometimes it's just putting that one foot in front of the other and making it out of your bedroom for the day. And that's okay. You just take it one step at a time, reach out for help. That 988, I will have to give them a plug. That is the suicide prevention hotline. They 24 hours a day. You can call or text from your cell phone, 988. There are licensed people on the other end of the line there to talk to you, even if it's 2:00 in the morning and you wake up and you're struggling and you just need somebody to talk to, but you feel like nobody will understand.
Yeah.
Reach out to them.
Okay. That's good. That's really good. 988. I did not know that.
Okay.
Oh, that's so powerful. Yeah. Or everybody knows someone dealing with something. And maybe it's not like true, what am I going to say? Like it could be depression. It could be anxiety, stress, PTSD. Like it could be little, or it could be huge. And like you're saying, one day at a time, knowing that today should be a little bit better than yesterday.
Yeah.
And the next day we've got to be a little bit better, because we can't stay in that pit. No one wants to be in the darkness forever. You cannot do that. He is the light, and eventually we got to get back to the light, but allowing yourself to be in that pit for a minute, like I said, that's where the majority of the people so far that I've interviewed, that's where they've found peace when they didn't have anywhere else to turn. And I didn't really know that it would be the theme, but here we are. It's kind of like God is going to take you. He's going to humble you some way. And sometimes that means dragging you into some deep, deep things so that you can find your way out and you realize that life is better this way.
That's right. That's right.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Kylene.
Well, thank you.
That was so special. I appreciate you so much. It's courageous, it's nerve-wracking, and it's bold to share stuff like this. And so, like she said, if we can help one person, if we can help 10, or if we can help the masses, it's so very worth it. And that's what these testimonies are all about. So again, use the comments and say thanks to her. We appreciate that. She'll come back to Facebook and YouTube periodically and see what you guys are saying. Before we leave, Jennifer is one that you've already touched. She has a similar story, and it's a hard story to have. And she says, bless that nurse. So
thank you, Jennifer.
When you can commiserate, you're like, yes, sister, preach it. Yes. They know what you're talking about.
Yes.
Well, Kylene, stay on the line with me for just a second. Thank you guys so very much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you very, very soon. God bless as always.
Thank you.